Okay, so thank you for having me. Can you hear me? Yes. So this is my lot. I'm keeping you for lunch. I'm going to defend Shula, and I'm going to talk philosophy. Bear with me. So the title is, this isn't about Alistair, Shula, Hebden-Lloyd, and Murdoch on love. And when this went through the very cruel peer review system, I got 19 reviews, most of it positive, fortunately, and number 13 was very accurate. It said, feels really organic from a scholar immersed in their work with the radio on. And this was what happened. I was working on Murdoch, writing on the most recent of her publications, and then I heard Shula sort of say, I don't love you anymore, while I noticed how much was written on love in Murdoch. So that's what brought this together. So what was the situation? 14th of March, 2018, a year ago, Shula realizes her marriage is over. And she says to Alistair, it's just how I feel, I just don't love you anymore. And what was interesting is that she keeps repeating that, I don't love you anymore, I don't love him anymore. And at the top of her voice, when her son comes home, right, it's all rather cruel, but she can't explain it. She can't say why that is a sufficient reason. So this is where Murdoch comes to the rescue. And I have to say as well that I thought Shula needed a defense, right? A woman should be believed at her work from time to time. And I know how controversial that is. So, first of all, Murdoch, I don't know, she was a great Archers fan, and I assume some Archer fans know of her work. Is that right? Is anyone? Yeah. So she born 1919. So this is her centennial. There's all sorts of activities going on. So she was a great listener to the Archers. She was also a great novelist, wrote 26 novels between 1954 and 1995. And she was, what is less known, a philosopher. She was the first to introduce Sartre to the English-speaking world. She wrote on Plato, and I've brought some props just in case the technology wouldn't work. Sovereignty of Good, 1970, is still a classic in philosophy. And 1992, she publishes The Metaphysics as a Guide to Morals, which was actually the first book I read by her, which is a rather unusual way to get into Murdoch, which I think is still one of the most brilliant and understandable books of philosophy. And love is a central notion, especially in the sovereignty of good. So this is what she writes there. Should an unhappy marriage be continued for the children, the love which brings the right answer is an exercise of justice and realism and really looking. Now, what I hope to do is to sort of explain this quotation, but it's really, Murdoch, looking is a really important aspect of her thinking when it comes to love, when it comes to moral philosophy in general. But to introduce her topic, I thought it might be useful to sort of relate the existing positions of other characters to philosophical positions. So, first of all, hedonism, Kenton. This is both Kenton and Elizabeth do this a bit. Shula says, I don't love you anymore. And Kenton says, if that's how you feel, then you should divorce Alistair, right? So feelings of pleasant and of pleasure and of pain are what makes the decision warranted for him. Determinism, again, this is Elizabeth and Kenton a bit. They both say, well, if things just go to the end of the road, things run their course, those sorts of things. It just happens. And Alistair has nothing of it, right? He says, like a car crash where nobody is guilty. He doesn't like that. But the most interesting one, and here I'm going to defend another one, is Jill. And she has actually a really interesting way of arguing her case. So she mostly argues from principles. So this phrase, do your wedding vows mean nothing to you? It's hers. And then Shula says, well, she first doesn't think it's a fair question. And secondly, she says, well, they did when I set them, which is really a cop-out, because if that's a promise, what is a promise? But there's a really interesting scene when Jill again reverts to principle when the two women reconcile. And I think that scene is both rather moving and rather comical at the same time. So Jill is talking to her daughter Elizabeth. This is when Elizabeth still believes in the existence of Meredith. And she says, well, this is what mothers do. Mothers, support their children. And Jill thinks, okay, aha, I've got it. Off she goes, finds Shula, who's bell ringing at the moment, and says, I support you. And Shula has no clue what she's talking about. And I know you don't like that, da-da-da-da-da. And Jill says, no, let me explain. Mothers support their children, and that's what I'm doing now. So Shula still doesn't get it, and it's not until Jill says, can I have a hug, that they reconcile. And I thought that was a rather moving and well-written scene. So, hedonism, right? Pleasure or pain. Determinism, this is what's going to happen. Principle, this is which applied in life. But the most interesting response is, of course, Alistair. And Alistair is where Iris Murdoch comes in. So Alistair keeps emphasizing reason and argument. When the first time Shula tells him, I don't love him anymore, he says, we need to talk about this. He calls the situation insane, madness, stupid. And he keeps thinking that insight in the causes, insight might cause her to change her mind. And she's saying, no, that's not going to happen. And then when none of this happens, he reverses to magical thinking. So first, suddenly he starts saying that the whole world, the universe of women, especially Anisha, Shula, is against him. And then he reverts to gambling. Now, that's slightly what Murdoch calls in The Sovereignty of Good, ideally rational man. She develops this sort of man, this image, in a discussion with one of her contemporaries, Stuart Hampshire's, but she says it's also lurking behind a lot of the things that we're doing. So perhaps it's lurking behind Ambridge as well. So what characterizes ideally rational man? He says we ought to know what we're doing. We should aim at total knowledge of our situation and a clear conceptualization of all our possibilities. So this is Alistair. He says, well, when there is a situation, we need to understand the situation in its extremes, and then once we have that, we take a decision and we act. And that's what he wants to do. He wants to have a full understanding of the situation. And Murdoch objects to this. She says, well, she has a number of objections to it, but one of them is that she thinks we shouldn't think of moral philosophy just in terms of action and choice. And other is that she says people are not like that. When we make a decision, she quotes Sartre, the die is already cast. What she wants to do instead is bring in love as a central notion into philosophy. And she says love is this. It's the extremely difficult realization that something other than oneself is real. Love is the discovery of reality. So what does she mean by this? She means that love is often, she's here influenced by people like Simone Weil. She says that love is waiting. What we need to do in moral situations is often wait and look and see what the situation requires. She also, and this is one of her really big points, says where moral philosophy matters is often what we do in between decisions, what kind of thoughts we have, how our inner life develops. When it comes to the decision, often the decision has already been made. What moral philosophy should look at is that period in between decisions, where we're musing, where we're thinking, where we're attending to other things. And that's actually really difficult because, according to Iris Murdoch, we are all very selfish people. Now, and I think that the Archer family sort of illustrates very well. I mean, she also says love is ambiguous, and if you have ever read one of her novels, you know how ambiguous she can present that. But love can bring us out of ourselves. It can bring us awareness of the other. And she says falling in love is often a characteristic of that, right? Falling in love, this is a quotation from her later work, is for many people their most intense experience, bringing with it a quasi-religious certainty, and most disturbing because it shifts the center of the world from the outside, to the outside to the other place. So falling in love can sort of bring this moral pilgrimage, this moral change in people, Murdoch argues. So was that what happened to Shula? Now, as the story unfolds, we know that she had that crucial insight was gained, actually, by her feeling briefly attracted to the builder, Philip Moss, as she confesses at one point to her cousin, Lillian. So as the soul in Plato's Phaedrus, falling in love, even if only so briefly, because it was briefly, helped her see what is missing and remember the love and the joy she had once had. So she often talks about joy as well. She wants to get the joy back. So Shula may lack the moral vocabulary to express this insight in anything but selfish terms, but other characters may miss it as well by looking at it from different positions. Shula's love is likely to be a mixture of selfishness and selfishness. She may be attracted to the good, to some sort of standard, and that is happening at the cost of actual individuals. But none of this implies, I would say, that she did not retrieve a genuine memory of what is essential in her life. Love is ambiguous. It is often, but not always, selfish, but it's also central to our lives and it motivates us. As Murdoch puts it, we're spiritual creatures, attracted by excellent, made for the good. So the remembered attraction to the good explains why Shula refuses to compromise any longer and why she fears that if she stays with Alistair, her love may attach itself to something unworthy. She will start to hate Alistair, and all our love will be crushed out of her. Turning 60, as Shula does in the summer of 2080, is not for her a reason to give up on loving. On the contrary, there's no retirement age in moral pilgrimage. And I think it's very interesting that when Karen presented her, this is also her queer time, right? She doesn't give up on that. She is wonderful. So where does that leave us? Well, when I was doing this over the summer, I was writing this article and listening fanatically to the artists and hoping nothing would sort of ruin my argument. And then this week, so I just moved house. We are without internet and everything. And then I saw Thursday, Shula has her doubts, so I sort of freaked out. And I cancelled all my appointments to be at the radio at 7 o'clock. Anyway, so Shula's sermon, where is it coming? So I'm really pleased Shula is interested in art because this is a wonderful other Murdochian turn where art is really important for Murdoch. So in The Bell, for instance, she uses this painting in the National Gallery for one of her characters to change her mind and find out what she's doing. So that Shula said on Thursday, I don't have it literally, but something along the line, art can help you spiritually, transcendence. She was completely crushed. But I would say that is a really Murdochian idea, and I'm really, really excited to hear that. So what will happen on Sunday? I'm really glad I'm presenting now. I'm done. I have my hopes up that she will say something fantastic and she will explain and get this Murdoch in her, but I'm not holding my breath. Thank you.
That was absolutely joyous. It really was.
Absolutely love that.
Questions, anyone?
Well, your Shula haters out there, go for it.
Can we just have a quick show of hands? Who hates Shula and thinks she's irredeemable?
Oh, okay.
Not so many, actually.
They've gone down in
Very good.
numbers. They've gone down in numbers.
Yeah.
What about the show of hands as to whether she was just normal human fallible?
Normal, human, and fallible Shula.
I think
Ooh. Anything else? Anyone want to pick up on the Iris Murdoch? Oh, there we are. Jump.
I wanted to know whether you thought Shula's age, she mentioned that she was 60, had a factor, because I was reading in the paper a few months ago that the rise of divorce in this particular age demographic has gone much higher than it used to be. So is it reflecting something about social change happening in our country?
So that's not my expertise. I don't know at all. But what I thought was interesting is that she was not believed, right? So I thought this was a really good reason. And so over the summer, I showed my paper to a couple of my friends who are not Murdoch specialists to see if they could understand it. And I had really wonderful conversations, really moving conversations about divorce and why people divorce, and that some reasons are not considered good enough for divorce. So I also think, well, if she doesn't love him, that is a really good reason to divorce. And so I wanted to come to her defense. And even at 60, right, that is still an age in which a woman should be believed and should be allowed to do something with her life. No.
Not just legally, I mean legally, there's only a few ways to get divorced, and they have to be really...
I know, in this
the
country it's
burden of
very
proof's
strange.
incredibly high,
Yeah,
very weird.
It's very strange.
It's not really a question, I just want to say thank you for doing that, because I've been in the minority in effectively after groups listening to Shula's story, and I don't much like Shula, I'll be honest, but this storyline had me kind of fired up. I allowed myself with Shula when I was much younger, but I made some of the decisions coming from a religious sort of background family, and the battles that she went through justifying herself are similar to the ones that I went through. Trying to explain, I haven't read any of Iris Murdoch, I'm going to have to go and do that. Trying to explain my decision making, you have summed it up, was very, very difficult. Clearly, for most people here, it still doesn't, it doesn't resonate. But thank you, because I know which direction I want to go and meeting down. I can come and find you later.
Yeah, I'll recommend some. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
One question to the back.
I saw the breakup being triggered finally to Shula's realisation that the marriage was at an end when she sought Alistair's advice about whether she should own up about the Hunt Saboteur incident, where her beliefs were really challenged. She had two sets of loyalties that were really challenged, and she needed somebody to talk about that with as to what the right course of action was. He wasn't the least bit interested, he didn't want to know, he didn't care what she thought. And at that point, I thought, you know what, just get rid of him. This is not a voice.
So maybe the end of moral philosophy
Yes.
is the end of marriage.
That might well be. I mean, it was also very well introduced just the week before, where she had just gotten the inheritance from Caroline, and she says, let's do something, go somewhere. And he says, it's just not my cup of tea. And then they make... That was her attempt, yes. Yeah. That was her last attempt. But I think you sort of see how dour and sour and everything he'd become, yeah. And not interested, yes.
Would people's reactions have been the same if it had been Alistair who had said, I want out, and not Shula?
That might not, yes. No, I don't think so. I think they would have been different, but yeah. Well, because, this is pure speculation. I mean, I don't know, but I do think it's a bit in the question, Michelle as well, right? That I think women are just not regarded in the same way as men, right? So Alistair, would he have been said like, this is what you do by his father, like you just stick in a marriage? In particular with her son. So her son comes and says, well, what would your life be like without being married? I mean, I just thought, 2018, I'm still hearing this, like you can't be anything but married. I don't think the same applies to men, so I think the responses would have been different.
You don't think it applies?
I think
It'll be
I
different.
mean, surely, there's an equality here. Either it's wrong or it's right. Whether you're a man
what
or a
is
woman.
wrong or what is right?
I mean, doing what Shula did.
Okay, but I'm not saying it's wrong or it's right.
I'm saying morally, there's only difference between a man doing it and a woman saying it.
I see, but I'm not in the business of saying it's wrong or it's right. I'm trying to say, how do we understand this when she doesn't give any reasons?
Right, lunch.
Should we all go to lunch now?
Is that an hour? 1 hour. 1 hour.
I forgot to do my thing of the Irish Murdoch postcard. Okay, but